My 16-year-old granddaughter's phone rang at midnight. When she looked at the screen, she screamed. The caller ID said, "Grandpa James, my husband James died 7 years ago." I heard Maya's scream from my bedroom and ran to her room. She was sitting up in bed, staring at her phone like it was a snake, the screen still lit up with that impossible name. "Grandma Ruth! Grandma Ruth!" Her voice was shaking. "It says Grandpa James is calling. How is that possible?" I looked at the screen. There it was, his name, his old phone number, the number I'd called 1,000 times during our 45 years of marriage. The number that had been disconnected 7 years ago when he died. "Don't answer it," I said. "It's probably a scam. Someone using his old number." But the phone kept ringing, and something in me, curiosity, hope, fear, I don't know, made me reach for it. "Answer it," I heard myself say. "Put it on speaker." Maya's hand trembled as she accepted the call and tapped the speaker button. "Hello?" Her voice was barely a whisper. There was silence for a moment. Then a man's voice came through the phone. Deep, warm, achingly familiar. "Maya, honey, it's Grandpa." The voice sounded exactly like James. Exactly. The same tone. The same slight southern accent. The same way he said honey with that gentle emphasis. I felt the room spin. This wasn't possible. James was dead. I'd held his hand as he died. I'd buried him. I'd mourned him for 7 years. But before I tell you who was really on that phone, and trust me, the truth is something I never could have imagined. I need to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me. Have you ever received a call or message from someone who's passed away? Have you experienced something you couldn't explain? Let me know in the comments. And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share real stories like this every single day. Mysteries, family secrets, and moments that change everything. My name is Ruth Morrison. I'm 72 years old. This is my story. I met James Morrison when I was 22 years old, working as a secretary at a law firm in Charlotte. He was 25, a young associate attorney with an easy smile and kind eyes. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on Christmas Eve, 1975. We were married in a small church ceremony in June of 1976, and we spent the next 45 years building a life together. James was my best friend, my partner, my everything. We raised 2 children, our daughter Caroline and our son Michael. We bought a small house that we slowly turned into a home. We celebrated anniversaries and birthdays and ordinary Tuesday nights like they were treasures, because they were treasures. Every moment with James was a gift. He retired from his law practice at 65. We were planning to travel, see the world, visit all the places we'd always talked about but never had time for. Then, 7 years ago, on a perfectly ordinary Wednesday morning, James had a massive heart attack. He was in the garden, planting tomatoes. I was inside making lunch. I heard a sound, a thud, and when I went outside, he was on the ground. I called 911. They came quickly. But it was too late. James died in the ambulance before we even reached the hospital. He was 68 years old. The world ended that day. Or at least my world did. The first year after James died was a blur of grief. I couldn't sleep in our bed. I couldn't look at his clothes in the closet. I couldn't answer the phone because for months I kept expecting it to be him. Our daughter Caroline was 38 when James died, living in Atlanta with her husband and 2 teenage kids. Our son Michael was 35, living in Seattle with his wife and young son. They came for the funeral. They stayed for a week. Then they went back to their lives, and I was alone in the house where James and I had spent 40 years. The grief was suffocating. But slowly, very slowly, I learned to live with it. I joined a grief support group. I volunteered at the library. I forced myself to keep going because that's what James would have wanted. 3 years after James died, Michael and his wife divorced. It was messy and painful, and Michael struggled. His ex-wife got primary custody of their son, and Michael's life fell apart. He lost his job, struggled with depression, made some poor financial decisions. Michael's daughter, my granddaughter Maya, was 9 when her parents divorced. She was caught in the middle of their conflict, and it hurt her deeply. 2 years ago, when Maya was 14, her mother remarried and moved to California with her new husband. Maya didn't want to go. She wanted to stay in Charlotte, in the only home she'd ever known. Michael was still struggling, still trying to get his life together. He was living in a small apartment, working odd jobs, barely making ends meet. So I offered to take Maya in. She can live with me, I told Michael. Finish high school here. Have stability. Michael was relieved. Maya was grateful. And I was given a second chance at purpose. Maya moved into our guest room 2 years ago. She brought life back into this quiet house. Her laughter, her music, her teenage drama and homework stress and friend problems. She filled the emptiness that James had left behind. Maya never really knew James well. She was only 9 when he died, and we'd only visited Seattle a few times when she was younger. She had vague memories of him. Grandpa was tall, and he had a big laugh, and he gave the best hugs. But that was about it. Still, she kept a framed photo of him on her nightstand. A picture from when she was 5, sitting on his shoulders at the beach, both of them laughing at something off camera. I wish I remembered him better, she told me once. Everyone says he was amazing. He was, I said. And he would have loved you so much. When James died, I'd kept his phone number active for about 6 months. I couldn't bring myself to disconnect it at first. I'd call it sometimes, just to hear his voicemail recording. You've reached James Morrison. Leave a message and I'll call you back. Eventually, I let the phone company disconnect the number. It was too painful to keep paying for a phone that would never ring again. That was nearly 7 years ago. So when Maya's phone lit up at midnight with Grandpa James and his old disconnected number, it was impossible. Impossible. But there it was, ringing, calling my granddaughter from beyond the grave, and when we answered, the voice on the other end sounded exactly like him. Maya? Honey, it's Grandpa, the voice said. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need you to listen. I need to talk to your Grandma Ruth. Is she there? Maya looked at me, her eyes wide with terror and confusion. I took the phone from her trembling hands. Who is this? My voice was shaking. This isn't funny. Who are you? There was a pause. Then the voice, James's voice, that impossible, achingly familiar voice, said something that made my blood run cold. Ruth? It's not James, but I need you to know something about James that he never told you. Something important. Something that's going to change everything. I couldn't breathe. The voice sounded so much like James that my brain couldn't process it. Who are you? I asked again, my voice barely a whisper. My name is Joseph. Joseph Morrison. I'm James's twin brother. The room tilted. I sat down hard on Maya's bed. That's impossible. James didn't have a twin brother. He didn't have any siblings. He was an only child. That's what he told you. But it wasn't true. Maya was staring at me, confused and frightened. I put a hand on her shoulder, trying to steady both of us. I don't understand, I said. Why would James lie about having a brother? Why would he lie about having a twin? Joseph's voice, so eerily similar to James's, softened. Because we had a falling out 30 years ago. A bad one. We stopped speaking. And James, being James, decided it was easier to pretend I didn't exist than to explain why we weren't in each other's lives. What did you fight about? That's a long story. And I'll tell you if you want. But right now, I need to tell you why I'm calling. Ruth, I'm dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors give me maybe 2 months. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sympathy for a man I'd never met. Anger at James for lying to me for 45 years. Confusion about all of it. I'm sorry you're sick, I said carefully. But I still don't understand why you're calling Maya's phone at midnight. How did you even get her number? I've been keeping track of the family, Joseph said. From a distance? I know that's strange, but after James died, I wanted to make sure you all were okay. I have my ways of finding information. That should have creeped me out, but something in his tone was sincere. Sad. James left something for Maya, Joseph continued. Something important. But he couldn't tell you about it because it involved me and he'd spent decades pretending I didn't exist. Left something? What do you mean? A bank account. In Maya's name. James set it up 15 years ago when she was born. He'd been putting money in it every year for her college, for her future. There's about $200,000 in it now. I felt like I'd been punched. 200,000? That's impossible. We didn't have that kind of money. Where would James get From me, Joseph said quietly. I was successful in business. Very successful. And even though James and I weren't speaking, I wanted to help. So every year, I'd send James money, and he'd put it in the account for Maya. For all his grandchildren, actually. But Maya's was the only one he completed before he died. Why wouldn't he tell me? Because he was stubborn and proud. Because explaining the account meant explaining me, and he'd rather die than admit he'd lied to you for our entire marriage. Harsh words, but they rang true. James had been stubborn and proud. I'm calling now because I'm dying, Joseph said. And I need to make sure Maya gets that money. The account is still active, but it's in a trust that requires my signature to release. If I die without signing, it goes into probate hell and might take years to sort out. What do you want from us? I want to meet you. And Maya, I want to sign the papers in person with a lawyer present so there's no question about the legitimacy. And I want... His voice broke slightly. I want to see James's granddaughter before I die. I want to tell her about her grandfather, the real James, the one who existed before our fight. Maya was crying quietly beside me. I put my arm around her. This is a lot to process, I said. I know. And I'm sorry for calling so late and for scaring you. But time isn't on my side anymore. I'm in hospice care in Raleigh. That's only 2 hours from Charlotte. If you could come tomorrow, today actually, it's after midnight, I can explain everything. Show you proof. Transfer the account properly. How do I know this isn't a scam? Fair question. I can give you the name of my lawyer, the name of the bank where the account is held. You can verify everything before you come. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm just asking for a chance to do right by my brother's granddaughter before I die. I looked at Maya. She looked at me. We were both thinking the same thing. This was insane. But what if it was true? Give me the lawyer's information, I said. And the bank details. I'll verify. If it checks out, we'll come tomorrow. Today. But if this is some kind of scam, it's not. I promise you, Ruth. I'm just a dying man trying to fix one last thing before I go. He gave me the details. A lawyer named Patricia Chen in Raleigh. A bank called First National Trust. An account number. After we hung up, I sat there with Maya in shocked silence. Grandma, was that really Grandpa's twin brother? I don't know, baby, but we're going to find out. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold an hour before sunrise. Maya's phone on the table between us like it was radioactive. I called the number he gave me. Patricia Chen. She answered on the second ring. Professional, calm, real. Yes, ma'am, she said. Joseph Morrison is my client. Yes, there is a trust in your granddaughter's name. Yes, funds are available. Yes, Joseph is in hospice at Lakeview Care in Raleigh. And yes, he would like to release the assets while he's still able to sign. Then I called the bank. They confirmed the account existed. They confirmed the amount, $204,612. By 8 a.m., I had my keys in my hand. Grandma, Maya said softly, standing in the doorway with her hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands. Are we really doing this? We're going to Raleigh, I said. Get your shoes. The drive from Charlotte to Raleigh is a little over 2 hours if traffic behaves. I've made that drive before, for weddings, for funerals. This one felt like both. Maya was quiet most of the way. She watched the trees blur past the window, picking at the edge of her thumbnail the way she does when she's overwhelmed. Do you think he's really Grandpa's twin? She asked finally. I don't know yet. Do you want him to be? That question landed like a stone in my chest. I don't know that either, I told her honestly. Lakeview Care sat behind a line of pines, quiet, clean, not sad the way some places are. The woman at the front desk knew exactly who we were the moment I gave my name. He's been waiting, she said softly. Room 112. He's awake, but he's tired. My hands were shaking when I pushed open the door. For a second I couldn't move, because lying in that bed was my husband. Not James, I knew that. My mind knew that. But my eyes didn't. Joseph Morrison was thinner than James had ever been, his skin sallow, cheekbones sharp. But the structure was there, the same jaw, the same brow, the same hands. Lord, those hands. Large, veined, familiar. James's hands holding me in the kitchen. James's hands steadying our children when they took their first steps. When Joseph looked up and saw me, his eyes filled instantly. Ruth, he whispered. You look just like you did in '92. He always said you never changed. My throat closed. That's not true, I said quietly. None of that is true. I'm old, he smiled. And in that smile, for a heartbeat, I saw my husband. Maya hovered behind me, tense, uncertain. And you, Joseph breathed, looking at her. You must be Maya, Maya swallowed. Are you really my grandpa's brother? Joseph let out a soft, shaky laugh. Yeah, honey. I'm the family secret. I pulled a chair to the side of the bed. Before anything else, I need to see proof, I said. Pictures, documents, something that shows you're not just a very good liar with a familiar voice. Fair, he said. His hands trembled as he reached for a worn leather folder on the bedside table. He opened it and slid out a stack of photographs, the kind you had to take at the drugstore back then. Faded. Real. The first picture nearly stopped my heart. James, young, maybe 20, 21. Hair thicker, darker, standing shoulder to shoulder with another young man who was his mirror. Same face, same smile. Both of them in Army uniforms. Basic training, Joseph said. Fort Jackson, 1971. He barely passed the vision test. I barely passed the run. The next photo was from our wedding day. I knew that day like scripture, June 12th, 1976. Me in my off-the-rack cream dress. James in his Navy suit, only this photo was wider than the one we'd framed. In ours, it's just me and James. In this one, standing next to us, is Joseph. Same face, slightly different hairstyle, slightly different tie. James's arm is around him. I felt dizzy. James cut you out of our wedding photo? Joseph let out a long breath. Yeah, I guess he did. Something in me twisted, hurt. Not just for me, but for him. Why? Maya asked. Her voice was small. Why did you guys stop talking? Did you hate each other? Joseph closed his eyes for a moment, like he was gathering strength. When he opened them again, his voice was softer, lower, confession mode. Your grandpa and I grew up with nothing, he said. South side of Charlotte. Our dad drank. Our mom worked 2 jobs. We shared everything. We were closer than brothers. We were each other's only safe place. He looked at me. Ruth, you remember when James was starting at the firm? Money was tight, right? I nodded. We were eating spaghetti 4 nights a week. Joseph smiled faintly. Yeah, he told me. Well, I had started a small trucking company. I was doing well finally. First one in the family to really get money. James came to me and said, I need $10,000 to get Ruth and me through this first year. I swear I'll pay you back. I gave it to him. No hesitation. I blinked. James never told me that. I know. He was proud. Joseph's face tightened. When it came time to pay me back, he couldn't, and instead of telling me the truth, he avoided me. Calls went unanswered. Thanksgiving turned into an argument. I said some ugly things. He said uglier. We both said things you can't take back. He swallowed. And then, we just stopped. 2 grown men who'd survived everything in childhood couldn't survive $10,000 and pride. We didn't talk for 30 years. The room was quiet. Maya wiped her face. That's stupid, she whispered. Joseph actually laughed. You're not wrong. Then his breath hitched and he pressed a hand to his side. Pain. Are you okay? I asked, instinctively leaning forward. I'm on borrowed time, he said softly. So let's do what we came to do. He pulled out a final set of papers, legal documents with tabs and signatures already marked. This, he said, looking at Maya, is your future. Your grandpa wanted you to have choices, college, freedom, safety. I promised him I would make sure you got it if he couldn't. My eyes stung. You talked to James before he died? Joseph's voice broke. He called me from the hospital parking lot 2 weeks before he passed. First call in 30 years. He said, if something happens to me, don't let my girl go without. He was crying. I'd never heard him cry. Something in me cracked open hearing that. Pain, anger, love, all tangled. Joseph picked up the pen with hands that shook so badly he had to steady them with his other hand. Patricia, the lawyer, was there now. When had she come in? I hadn't even heard the door. She positioned the forms, pointed. Initial here, sign here, date here. Joseph did. Slow, careful, intentional. That's it, Patricia said gently. Funds will transfer within 48 hours. Maya covered her mouth. She was shaking. But I wasn't looking at the papers. I was looking at Joseph's arm, right at his wrist. at the medical bracelet. It didn't say Joseph Morrison. It said James Morrison. My first thought was that I was reading it wrong. The light in the hospice room was soft and yellow, and my eyes are not what they used to be. So I leaned in closer to Joseph's wrist. James Morrison, not Joseph. James, my husband's name, my husband's full legal name. On the wrist of the man who was not my husband, something in my stomach went cold. "Why does that say James?" I asked quietly. Joseph blinked, like he did not understand what I meant. Then he followed my eyes, looked down at his own wrist, and let out a dry little laugh that did not sound like relief. "More like resignation. Oh, that," he said. "They put the wrong name on admission. The nurse typed James instead of Joseph. I told them to fix it, but honestly I did not push it. I figured I was dying anyway, and insurance was still going through, so I chose my battles," he said it casually. Reasonable, neat. Clean, it did not feel neat. Joseph saw my face and his eyes softened. "Ruth, I am Joseph. I swear to you, I am not trying to play with you." Maya looked between us. "Grandma, is something wrong?" Patricia, the lawyer, was organizing the papers. "Everything is legally correct," she said. "The trust matches Joseph Morrison. His ID matches Joseph Morrison. The account is real. The transfer is real. You and Maya are protected. Can I see the ID?" I asked. Patricia nodded and handed me a copy of his North Carolina state ID. I held it in my hand like it might burn. Me name given, Joseph Allen Morrison. Date of birth, same as James' address, Raleigh. North Carolina organ donor, yes, the photo was current. Thin face, tired eyes. The man in the bed, not James 7 years ago. Joseph, now it matched. On paper, it matched. So why did the hair stand up on the back of my neck, Ruth? Joseph said softly. "Look at me." I did close up. I could see the differences. Small, but they were there. The left eyebrow on Joseph had a small, faint scar that James never had. Joseph's bottom lip was a little fuller. His eyes sat just slightly lower at the outer corners. You would never notice unless you loved one of them for 45 years and kissed that face 10,000 times. This was not James come back from the dead. This was a twin. My body relaxed an inch, but only an inch. "Why did you call Maya and not me?" I asked. "If you have been watching the family like you said, why not call my phone instead of scaring a 16-year-old girl in the middle of the night?" Joseph exhaled. "Because you still have a landline. You do not answer unknown numbers. Maya does. Teenagers answer everything. I needed someone to pick up fast. Ruth, listen to me. Time is not my friend. I would have called the cat if the cat could sign legal documents." Maya let out a wet laugh she had been holding back. The tension in the room cracked a little. I sat again. My knees suddenly felt weak. "Tell me something only James would know," I said. "Something he never told anybody else. Something I can check in my own memory without documents." Joseph nodded slowly. He closed his eyes for a second, and when he spoke, again his voice dropped lower, warmer, closer. "To the man I had loved since I was 22, you cried at the courthouse," he said. Quietly, my heart stopped. He kept going. "On your wedding day, before the church, before the vows. You and James had to stop by the courthouse to sign one last stupid piece of paperwork about the marriage license because the clerk had misspelled your middle name. You were embarrassed because your dress was not expensive. You thought the other brides in there were judging you. You said you felt cheap. James pulled you into that little hallway by the vending machines and told you that you were the most beautiful woman North Carolina had ever produced, and if anybody could not see that, then they needed their eyes checked and a Bible. Then he said he was going to spend the rest of his life proving you wrong about yourself. You laughed. You said you did not need that much proving. You said, give me at least a little mystery. He said you were all the mystery he would ever need, had never told that story to anyone. The courthouse moment was mine, private, sacred. It was a memory I carried alone because it felt like a secret promise that belonged only to James and me. I never even told Caroline. I never even told Michael. It was ours. Joseph opened his eyes. I know because James called me that afternoon, he whispered. He said I almost lost her over a $10 dress. I am going to work myself to death making sure Ruth never feels small again. Joe, I swear it. My hand was over my mouth. I could feel my pulse in my throat. My vision blurred. That was James. That was my husband. Maya squeezed my arm. Grandma, I wiped my face. I nodded. Okay, I said quietly. Okay, I believe you are his brother. Joseph let out a shudder, like his body had been holding that breath for years. Patricia finished packing the folder and stood. My part is complete, she said. Funds will clear into the education trust within 48 hours. Maya. That means you will be able to access tuition and cost of living when you enroll in a qualified program. We will also set Ruth as temporary guardian on disbursement decisions until you are 18. I will email documents for confirmation at the end of day. Maya just nodded. Her eyes were huge. Patricia turned to Joseph. Do you need anything else from me? Joseph shook his head. No, thank you. For everything. She gave a small, respectful nod and left the room. For a moment, it was just the three of us. A dying man, a scared teenager, and me, an old woman who thought she had already cried all her tears 7 years ago and is now discovering that grief can unfold in new shapes forever. I need to tell you both something else. Joseph said. His voice had changed, lower, heavier, almost afraid. James did not die the way you think he did. The room seemed to shrink. The hum of the medical monitor grew louder, the steady beeping marking the seconds before my world tilted again. What do you mean he didn't die the way I think he did? I asked. My voice was steady, but my hands were gripping the armrest so hard my knuckles turned white. Joseph's gaze shifted toward the window. Outside, a few raindrops tapped against the glass. I wasn't supposed to tell you this, he said, his tone low, almost apologetic. But I can't leave this world holding it anymore. I waited, my heart pounding. James didn't die instantly in that ambulance, Joseph said. He made it to the hospital. He was alive for almost 3 more hours. My breath caught in my throat. That's not true. The doctor told me. The doctor told you what James asked him to tell you, Joseph interrupted gently. He didn't want you to see him like that. He didn't want you to remember him in pain. He called me from the hospital. The nurses thought he was delirious, but he wasn't. He said he was sorry for everything. He told me he couldn't go before making things right. He asked me to finish what he started. He said, tell Ruth I love her enough to let her heal without me holding her back. My vision blurred. I felt the tears burning my eyes. Why would he do that to me? Why keep that from me? Because he loved you in a way that was too big for his own pride, Joseph said. He wanted you to have closure. He thought dying in your arms would break you. So he made it easier the only way he knew how. He let the lie stand. Maya was crying now. She stood behind me, holding my shoulders like she was afraid I might fall apart. Maybe I was. Joseph looked smaller in the bed. His breathing was labored. There's something else. The day he called me, he said he had one more secret. He told me he had written you a letter but never mailed it. He said it was hidden somewhere in the house. I didn't ask where. I thought it was his way of holding on to something private. But if he mentioned it, it meant he wanted you to find it. A letter. 7 years, and all this time there might have been a letter. Where? I asked. Joseph shook his head. He just said, she'll know where to look when it's time. Maybe he meant your house. Maybe the garden. Maybe his old desk. He didn't tell me more. I thought it was nonsense until I got sick. Then I kept thinking about it. I didn't want to die knowing you never read what he left for you. I felt the air go heavy again. The rain outside turned into a soft patter. Maya's hand was trembling on my shoulder. Ruth, Joseph said, voice weak now. I know this is a lot, but there's peace in truth even when it hurts. Don't let pride or grief bury what's still left to be found. He coughed, a deep, dry sound that made me reach instinctively for the water on his nightstand. His hand brushed mine when he took the glass. For a second, the warmth of that touch made my heart skip. It was the same texture, the same calluses, the same roughness of a man who once built the fence around our yard. He drank slowly, then looked back at me. I never stopped missing him, Joseph whispered. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw his face and felt like I was stealing his time. Maybe now, giving this to you, I can finally let that go. I wanted to say something, but no words came. Just the sound of his breathing and the soft rain outside. A nurse entered the room to check his vitals. She smiled gently, adjusted a few tubes, then turned to me. He'll need rest now, she said softly. Maya and I stepped into the hallway. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady myself. Grandma, Maya said, do you think the letter is real? I don't know, I said. But if it is, it's waiting for us. When we walked back to the car, I glanced at the hospice window. Joseph was lying still, eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. For a moment, I thought I saw him raise his hand in a small wave. The next morning, the phone rang again. The caller ID said, James Morrison. The next morning, I was standing at the kitchen sink washing a coffee mug when I heard it. The ringtone was normal. The name was not James Morrison. For a second, I could not move. My hands were in the water. My heart was in my throat. My body felt split between 7 years ago, and this exact moment, Maya was the one who touched the phone first. She looked at me, waiting. Her eyes were wide but steady. Put it on speaker, I said. She did. There was a pause. Then the same voice that had torn our night apart poured into my kitchen in the middle of daylight, like nothing in the world was strange about this at all. Ruth, are you there? It was Joseph. I could hear the weakness in his throat, the rasp, but the cadence was James. The way he said my name, always a little softer than anyone else ever said it. I am here, I said. My voice came out lower than I expected. Are you all right? I'm all right for now, Joseph said. I wanted to make sure you got home safe. I wanted to tell you I am grateful you came. You did not have to. I know I am not easy to accept. Maya and I were standing in the kitchen like statues. The morning light was coming in through the window above the sink and catching the dust in the air. I remember that detail for one reason. My memory locks little things in when my heart is racing. Dust in sunlight, hands in dishwater, caller ID with the name of the dead. We got home, I said. Joseph, why is the call showing as James Morrison? You said the nurse just typed it wrong on the bracelet. But this is my husband's name, his number. The same exact number I had disconnected 7 years ago. Tell me how that is happening. For a moment, I heard only his breathing. Then he said quietly, I did not change the line. I frowned. What do you mean you did not change the line? I kept his number, Joseph said. After he passed. The account with the carrier was joint under both our names from back in the 80s when we were sharing a plan to save money. When he died, I asked the company to keep the line active and roll it to me. I paid it every month and kept it open. I know that sounds obsessive, but it made me feel like I had him. I told myself it was in case I ever needed to reach your family. The truth is, I just could not turn off his voice. I called his voicemail every Sunday for 6 years. I had to sit down. You kept his number alive for 7 years. I whispered. Yes, he said. I am sorry if that hurts you. I swear I did not mean it to be a violation. I just was not ready to let go. Maya looked at me. Grandma, that is kind of sad, but also kind of sweet. I nodded, though the truth was it made me feel something more complicated than either of those words. Grief mixed with a strange kind of tenderness. My husband had a ghost, and that ghost loved him, Joseph, I said. You said yesterday there was something we needed to find in the house. A letter. I have been in that house for more than 40 years. I have cleaned every drawer in that house 3 times over. Where could he possibly hide anything from me? He told me he put it somewhere you would never look unless you had to fix something. Joseph said. I blinked. Fix something, yes, he said. He said Ruth is the heart. I am the hands. If I go first, the hands will not be there to fix the house. So I am going to make sure the message is where only the hands would ever check. I felt something click in my mind. The breaker box. James never trusted electricians unless he could see what they were doing. He used to tease me. He would say, Ruth, you handle people, I will handle sparks. I have not opened that breaker box once since he died. The only time it ever opened was when a fuse blew, or when he did his little spring check like he called it, Joseph, I said slowly. Do you mean the breaker box in the garage? There was silence. Then a soft sound, like a relieved laugh. That is where I would look first, he said. My pulse picked up. I will call you back. I told him. No, he said quickly. Do not hang up. Stay on the line, please. I want to hear you find it. I want to know you have it. I want to know I did not fail him. Something in his voice shook me. This was no longer about money. This was last act of loyalty. I put the phone on speaker and carried it with me. Maya stayed glued to my side. We walked through the hallway, past the photos on the wall, down the 2 steps into the garage. The air was cooler there, the light harsher. James's old workbench was still against the back wall exactly how he left it. Jars of screws, a coffee can full of nails. His red toolbox, still labeled with masking tape and his handwriting, the breaker box was on the left wall. Gray metal, 4 screws, painted over at least twice through the years. My hands were shaking as I reached up. "Do you need a screwdriver?" Maya asked. "In the jar," I said automatically. Flat head, yellow handle, she knew. She had watched him fix things when she was little and visiting. She put it in my hand. Without a word, I loosened the screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. The cover came forward with a reluctant little groan. For a second, I did not see anything, just switches. Labels in James's handwriting. Kitchen lights, washer, dryer, bedroom outlets. Then Maya pointed, "Grandma." There, tucked inside the cover, taped flat on the inside surface where you would never see it unless you actually unscrewed the whole front plate. A plain white envelope, my name on it in blue ink, Ruth. The sight of that handwriting hit me like a physical blow. I felt my knees weaken. I had to catch myself on the workbench with my free hand on the phone. Joseph exhaled. It sounded like a sob and a prayer at the same time. "You found it. Thank you, God." "You found it." I could not answer. I could not speak. The envelope was sealed. The paper had yellowed just slightly at the edges. 7 years waiting in the dark, Grandma," Maya whispered. "Open it." My fingers would not work. I had to force them to move. I slid one nail under the flap and lifted it carefully so I would not tear his writing. There was a single sheet of lined paper inside. James's handwriting again. Careful. Even. A little shaky near the bottom, like his hand had been tired. I unfolded it. I started to read Ruth. "If you are seeing this, it means I did not get to say goodbye the way I wanted. I am sorry. I tried. The page blurred in front of me. My throat closed. My eyes burned. Joseph's voice was still on speaker. Quiet. Waiting. "Read it to me," he whispered. "Please." I never got to hear his last words. "Let me hear him say them now." My hands were trembling so badly that Maya took the phone and set it on the workbench beside the envelope. She leaned close to me, her shoulder against mine, and waited. I could smell the faint trace of engine oil and cedar that still clung to James's tools. The sound of Joseph breathing on speaker filled the silence. I unfolded the paper completely and began to read aloud, the words shaking with every breath. "Ruth, if you are reading this, it means I could not find the strength to tell you everything while I was here. You were my compass. Every good thing in me came from the way you loved me. I know you think I was honest with you about everything. But there are 2 truths I never had the courage to speak." The first line already had tears running down my face. I read on. "First, I kept something from you. Years ago, before we were married, I made a promise to my brother Joseph. I told him that if life ever gave me more than I could handle, I would leave him something worth saving. I took that promise seriously, maybe too seriously. The day we argued, the day that ended our bond, it broke something sacred. I let pride steal 30 years from us. I told myself I was protecting you, that you didn't need to know about him. That was a lie. I was protecting my ego, not your peace. If you ever meet him again, tell him I never stopped loving him. Tell him I was wrong." I could hear Joseph's breath hitch on the other end of the call. Maya's hand tightened on my arm. "Second," I continued reading, "I have been afraid of dying since I was a boy. I saw death take my mother in her sleep, and I promised myself I would never let the people I loved see me fade that way. So if the time comes and I fall, I may ask you to let me go. It will not be because I do not want to fight. It will be because I want your last memory of me to be life, not loss." My voice cracked. I pressed the letter to my chest, but Maya whispered, "Finish it, Grandma." I nodded and kept reading. "Please do not let grief make your world smaller. Promise me you will keep the garden alive, that you will laugh when the tomatoes grow crooked, and remember that I planted them that way on purpose. Tell Maya I am proud of her before she ever needs to prove anything. Tell her college is not the dream, it is the doorway. I left something for her, for the future she deserves. It is not money that matters. It is a chance." The next lines were smudged, like he had cried while writing. "If Joseph is with you when you read this, then you know he kept his word. Forgive us both. Brothers are born to test each other, and I failed the test first. Tell him I am waiting where the hurt ends." I stopped. The last paragraph was shorter, his handwriting more uneven, the ink darker from pressing too hard. "Ruth, you are the love I prayed for before I believed in prayer. If I could live again, I would find you sooner. When the storms come, remember the psalm you used to read to me in the hospital. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. That was always my favorite line. Because my refuge was you, I folded the letter carefully, holding it like something holy. The garage felt still, as if the air itself was listening. On the phone, Joseph was crying quietly. "That sounds like him," he said. "That sounds exactly like my brother." I could not speak. All I could do was press the paper to my heart and nod, though he could not see me. After a long silence, Joseph cleared his throat. "Ruth, I don't think I'll make it much longer. But I can go now. I know he made it right. Thank you," I whispered. "For calling, for keeping his promise." "I should be thanking you," Joseph said. "You gave me a reason to stop running." Then the line went silent. No goodbye, no click. Just gone. Maya touched my arm. "Grandma," she said softly, "do you think he—" I looked at the phone, still showing the call duration frozen on the screen. The timer had stopped at the same second Joseph's voice had faded. "I think he's with his brother now," I said. Maya wiped her face. "And Grandpa got his second chance," I nodded. "Maybe we all did." Outside, the clouds parted just enough for a beam of sunlight to spill through the small window over the workbench, lighting the letter in my hands. Sometimes ghosts don't haunt to scare us. Sometimes they come to finish what love started. The funeral was small, not because there was no one to care, but because there was not enough time left to gather a lifetime of complicated love into one crowded room. The hospice chaplain offered a prayer. The lawyer, Patricia, came and stood quietly by the door with folded hands. A nurse cried. Maya held my arm the entire time, like she was the one keeping me upright. They listed him as Joseph Allen Morrison, but on the little temporary bronze plate by the flowers, the hospice nurse had written something in pen. Like a note on a lunch bag, brother, uncle, keeper of promises, that part was right. I did not tell Caroline and Michael everything. Not yet. I told them Joseph was family. I told them he was the one handling some legal matters James had left behind. I told them he was gone. I did not say he had the same face as their father. I did not say he had been erased from every photo they ever saw. I did not say my husband had lied for 45 years to protect his pride and then spent his last living hours trying to undo the damage. Some truths you have to hold a little while before you start passing them around. After the service, Patricia handed me a sealed envelope with my name on it, and another with Maya's. "The transfer is complete," she said softly. "The trust is active. The funds are secure. You won't have any trouble accessing them when the time comes." Joseph signed everything in a way that cannot be challenged. Maya looked at me, and I saw it in her eyes. Relief, but also something deeper. Not greed, not excitement, safety. That girl has lived too long without safety. That money was not just numbers. It was oxygen. On the way home from Raleigh, Maya was quiet for almost an hour. That is rare for a 16-year-old. We were about halfway back to Charlotte. Trees lining both sides of the road, the sky low and pale. When she finally spoke, "Grandma." "Yes, baby. Do you think he was scared to die? James?" "No," she said softly. "Joseph," I thought for a moment. "I think he was lonely." "I think that is worse than scared." Maya looked down at her hands. "Then I am glad we went." I reached across the console and squeezed her knee. "Me too." When we got back to the house, we went straight to the garage. The breaker panel was still open, the screws in a little dish, the envelope on the workbench like an altar. I put James's letter in a plastic sleeve. That sounds silly, but I could not stand the thought of grease or dust touching it. Maya laughed a little and said I looked like a museum curator. Maybe I did. That letter was the last piece of my husband I will ever receive in this world. I was going to treat it like bone and breath. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed with the letter in my lap and read it again. This time in silence, this time alone. There were pieces I had skimmed in the garage, but now I saw every word. He had left instructions. Ruth. If you are reading this and Maya is with you, I need you to listen to me and not argue. Especially you. I know you. I smiled and cried at the same time when I read that line. That was James, bossy with softness. The letter continued. Do not let her feel like she owes anybody for this money. It is not charity. It is not a favor. It is her inheritance, not just from me, from the life we fought to build. This is not about college only. This is about her not staying anywhere. She does not feel safe just because she cannot afford to leave. This is about her not having to choose between food and dignity. Tell her this is not a gift. This is a door. I pressed my fingers over that sentence. A door. I liked that. I understood it. I had spent years of my life trapped in situations because I did not have enough money to leave them. Jobs that underpaid. Church committees that drained. Moments where being polite cost me pieces of myself. I remember hiding grocery store meat under my coat in winter air so it would not thaw on the walk from the bus, praying no one saw and judged. Women of my generation know the price of staying quiet. We also know the luxury of an exit. James was buying our granddaughter a way out of any cage she ever finds herself in. I have never loved him more than in that moment. And then, near the end of the page, there was one last thing. One last line he had crammed into the bottom margin, like he ran out of room but could not leave without saying it. If you ever hear from me after I am gone, Ruth, do not be afraid. Sometimes love has to knock twice. I sat very still when I read that, the phone calls, the voice, the name on the screen in the middle of the night. Sometimes love has to knock twice. I do not believe in ghosts in the way movies tell it. I believe in memory. I believe in timing that feels holy. I believe in mercy arriving right before the deadline. That is what this was. Mercy on borrowed time. The next day, Maya posted something online. I do not use social media, not really, but she read it to me out loud while she typed. She wrote, "My grandpa died 7 years ago. Last night I heard his voice. Today I found out my future is paid for. People say money cannot buy love. I disagree. Money can buy safety. Safety lets you breathe. Breathing lets you hope. Hope is love." Then she turned her phone off and sat with me on the couch like she used to when she was little, shoulder pressed to my arm, head resting on me. 16 going on 30 sometimes, but in that moment, she was just my girl. That evening, we made dinner together. Nothing fancy. Chicken, rice, green beans in the pan the way James used to make them with garlic and a little too much black pepper. Maya set 2 plates on the table, then she hesitated. "Do we set one for him?" she asked quietly. My first instinct was to say no, to protect her, to close that door for her sake, to say we do not feed ghosts at this table. But then I thought about Joseph lying in that hospice bed alone for 3 decades of silence. I thought about a promise that survived pride, sickness, and time. I thought about the way James wrote, "You are the refuge," in his last shaky lines. "Put one more plate down," I said. Maya smiled, small and sad, and set the 3rd plate. She did not fill it. She just left it there. A place held. We ate in silence for a while. Not heavy silence, soft silence. Halfway through the meal, I felt something I have not felt since the night before James passed. Peace. Not the loud kind that shouts, "Everything is fine," the quiet kind that says you survived. After dinner, I washed the dishes. Maya dried. We moved around each other in the kitchen like we had been doing it for years. Rhythm, comfort, family. As I turned off the light and we headed down the hallway for bed, Maya looked back at the table and whispered, "Good night, Grandpa." I did not correct her. That night, for the first time in 7 years, I slept through until morning. No waking up at 3 a.m., reaching for a hand that is not there. No replay of sirens, no empty side of the bed burning like a missing tooth in my life. Just sleep. When I woke up, sunlight was already coming through the curtains, birds out in the magnolia tree, coffee smell drifting from the kitchen. Maya was humming under her breath while packing her backpack for school. Normal life, but not the same life. Because now there is a future laid out on the table like a map. College. Applications will not be panic, rent will not be panic. Leaving. A bad job will not be panic. Saying no will not be panic. Do you know how much power that gives a girl? James knew, Joseph honored it, and I am going to protect it. Before Maya left for school, she hugged me. Not the half-hug teenagers give when you embarrass them in public. A full hug, arms around my middle, face pressed into my shoulder like she was little again. "Thank you for not hanging up," she whispered. I was scared too, I told her. I just kept breathing. She nodded. I am going to do that too. When the door closed and the house went quiet, I stood there for a long time, holding James's letter against my chest. I thought about calling Caroline, about calling Michael, about telling them everything I will, one day, when I find the words, but this part, this moment, this quiet morning in Charlotte with sunlight on the kitchen tile and a future finally paid for. This part is mine and Maya's. People will say this sounds impossible. People will say grief plays tricks on the mind. People will say I wanted to hear my husband's voice so badly that I believed anything. Believe what you want. Here is what I know. My husband loved us. His brother loved him, and sometimes a phone call in the middle of the night is not a haunting. It is a hand reaching across 7 years to turn the light back on.